Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're peeling back the layers on, well, a public records battle that I think reveals a much larger and, frankly, more disturbing truth.
It's about how powerful government agencies, in this case, Los Angeles World Airports and the Personnel Department, seem to be using these systematic legal maneuvers to evade basic transparency laws.
And this isn't some theoretical argument about policy. We're doing a deep dive into the actual legal actions filed by a petitioner, Rodney Ruzan.
Exactly. And the whole mission here is to show you, step by step, how these agencies deliberately refuse to comply with specific mandatory duties under the California Public Records Act, the CPRA.
Right. And how that refusal ultimately led to a kind of legal checkmate.
It did.
So the core issue here, it seems almost deceptively simple. Mr. Ruzan asked for certified copies of 8 official COVID-19 mandate forms.
Right. These weren't, secret documents. These were forms the city was actively enforcing on its own employees.
But he asked for them in a very specific format, certified, which he needed for evidentiary use in court.
And that's the critical point. The whole goal of the CPRA is to maximize citizen access to government records. But here, the agencies produced basic PDFs. They were essentially saying, here's the content, but they withheld the one thing he needed.
The legal authenticity.
The legal authenticity. They flatly refused to certify the records, which basically forces the petitioner to treat their response as a wrongful withholding of the record itself.
Yeah, so that's the immediate question, right? If the government has a document, why on earth would they refuse to put their official legal stamp on it?
And more importantly, what does the law say they must do when they refuse? That's what this is all about. It's about unpacking that bureaucratic conspiracy of silence.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. It starts with the personnel department and a specific person.
It does. We see the first clear statutory failures with respondent Bruce E. Whitten. Now, he holds 2 key titles, Executive Director of the Civil Service Commission and Public Information Director of the Personnel Department.
So he's the guy. He's the one responsible for CPRA compliance.
He is. So Ruzan's initial request for these certified copies was filed on July 5, 2025. And that request, it immediately starts a timer.
A legal timer, a legal time.
Under the CPRA, an agency has 10 calendar days to determine if it will comply and notify the requester. So in this case, that deadline was July 15, 2025.
And what happened by July 15th?
Nothing.
Guessing.
Nothing.
Crickets. Mr. Whitten missed the mandatory deadline completely. He didn't respond, and he didn't even invoke the 14-day extension the law allows for.
So that's a clear violation right out of the gate.
It is. That procedural failure is foundational, but, the deeper issue is in the refusal itself. The law, Government Code 7922.530A, requires an agency to provide records in the format requested.
And for legal proceedings, a certified copy is a format.
Of course it is. It's the official version, authenticated by the custodian of records.
Okay, I have to pause here because this might seem a little in the weeds. Why does certification matter so much? Why couldn't a lawyer just, use the PDF? Well, think of it this way. The PDF is like a photocopy of a photocopy. It's easily questioned. It could be manipulated. A certified copy, though, that's the government officially attesting under penalty of law that this document is an authentic, true, and correct copy of the original.
It transforms a piece of paper into legally admissible evidence.
Precisely. Without that certification, the document is often, useless for the petitioner's express legal purpose.
So the city knew he needed the golden stamp, and they just offered him aluminum foil instead.
A good way to put it. And Mr. Whitten actually spelled out their bizarre legal position in an August 6, 2025 refusal.
This is weeks after the deadline. What did he say?
He explicitly argued that the CPRA has no provision requiring the city to provide certified copies. He insisted the act only requires producing records as found or normally kept.
Okay.
And then he makes this truly astonishing legal claim that certification is not a format under the CPRA.
That sounds like a lawyer trying to invent a loophole where one just doesn't exist.
Yeah.
If they have the record and they can certify it, which any official agency can, then refusing to do so seems like deliberate obstruction.
It absolutely does. The petition argues that this refusal constitutes a wrongful withholding because the uncertified copies just couldn't meet the petitioner's legally expressed need. They gave him the content.
But they legally withheld the usability of that content.
Exactly. And that shifts the entire burden back onto the citizen to somehow prove the document's authenticity, a burden the CPRA certification process is designed to eliminate.
And this wasn't a one-off. This intentional denial takes us directly to the systemic evasion pattern you mentioned. It wasn't just Bruce Whitten's department.
No, the same playbook was used by Los Angeles World Airports. And this is what leads us to the critical sort of checkmate provisions of the CPRA.
Right, because the law anticipates this kind of behavior.
It's smart. It anticipated agencies might try to dodge responsibility, so it created mandatory obligations that kick in when an agency says it can't or won't comply. We're talking about Government Code Section 7922.540.
This is where it gets really compelling, because these provisions mean the government can't just stonewall you. They have to put their refusal on the record in writing.
Correct. The first provision, 7922.54 EOA, is the mandatory explanation. If an agency claims they're unable to comply, say they can't certify the documents for some reason, they must provide a formal written explanation stating the specific reason why.
No vague excuses.
No. And the second one, 7922.54 BB, is what I like to call the ultimate truth serum.
Okay.
If the requested record simply doesn't exist in the certified format, if those official forms were never officially documented as certified versions, the agency must provide an affirmative written statement of non-existence. They have to go on the record and say, we don't have it.
So they have to either explain why they can't do it or admit it doesn't exist.
Yes. And the beauty, or maybe the scandal, in this petition is that both the Personnel Department, through Mr. Whitten, and Los Angeles World Airports violated both of those mandatory duties.
So let me get this straight. They didn't provide the certified records.
Correct.
They didn't issue the written explanation for why they couldn't.
Also correct.
And they didn't issue the non-existence statement either.
Not for a single one of the requested records. They chose total calculated silence on their mandatory legal duties. It's a strategy to create, a kind of bureaucratic quicksand.
It's the definition of obstruction.
It is. These are what are called ministerial duties. They aren't discretionary. They require a pen and paper or an email stating the facts. The failure to perform them makes the agency's entire response unlawful.
So let's look at Los Angeles World Airport specifically for a second. With their request, 25 Devil 22, they sent a generic extension notice. But even that was, you're saying, deficient.
Very deficient. It failed to confirm whether the record even existed or provide an estimated disclosure date, which are key requirements for a valid extension. Then, they just abruptly closed the request on August 1st.
On what grounds?
They just claimed all available records have been released, meaning those PDFs. But they completely sidestepped the core demand. No certification, and more importantly, no lawful justification under 7922.540 for withholding it.
Yeah.
They just acted like those laws didn't apply to them.
And as if that wasn't enough, there's the whole issue of who the official custodian of records even is.
Right. Transparency relies on knowing who is responsible. In another request, the petitioner specifically asked for the name and title of the official who was authorized to certify these documents.
What do they say?
It was an absolute shell game. Yeah. They identified a Mark Darius Frank, who is the Deputy General Manager of Airports TIFAs, as the person the coordinator reports to.
But not the actual custodian.
Not the actual legal custodian of records authorized to sign the certification. They gave the name of a supervisor, not the legally required official.
So, to summarize the pattern here, they refused to certify. They refused to say why they couldn't certify. And they refused to say if a certifiable version of the document even exists in the first place.
And that combination of mandatory failures is what makes this amended petition so powerful. Which brings us to the final part, the strategy that traps the system.
Because the legal system can't just tolerate this kind of ambiguity forever.
No, it can't. The amended petition for writ of mandate is, in effect, a massive bureaucratic crowbar.
So how does this legal tool force their hand when they've just relied on silence before?
It forces the court to compel them to perform one of three lawful, statutorily required acts. The court is asked to order the agencies to do one of these things. 1, finally produce the certified records.
Option 1.
Or 2, issue the mandatory written explanation for their inability to comply.
Option 2.
Or 3, issue the affirmative written statement that certified versions of the records simply do not exist.
That's brilliant. It just removes all the wiggle room. They can no longer hide behind that vague phrase, all available records have been released.
Exactly. They have to give a precise, legally compliant answer. And they have to finally stick their necks out by admitting either the records don't exist or they're just refusing to do their duty.
And that puts the accountability spotlight directly on the individuals involved.
It does. When the city of Los Angeles assigns deputy city attorneys, and we have their names, Priscilla Tomescu and Millie Huntley, to defend this repeated systemic failure by Los Angeles World Airports, Well, they're defending conduct that violates clear, non-discretionary duties of law.
The same goes for Bruce E. Whitten. He not only missed the deadlines, he created this legally dubious argument that certification is not a format, just to justify the refusal.
When officials in these positions and their legal counsel are actively defending procedural illegality, it really shows a willingness to frustrate the legal process. They seem to be undermining public access to the truth.
And it seems especially targeted at citizens who need these documents to pursue litigation.
I mean, this isn't about an honest mistake. This pattern, across multiple high-level officials and attorneys, it suggests a conscious, concerted strategy. The goal seems to be to make CPRA compliance so difficult, so technical, so expensive that most citizens just give up.
They violate the clear requirements of the law, betting that you won't escalate it to court.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean for you, the average citizen listening to this? I think this saga of Rodney Rusan shows that your right to public records. It's not just about getting a pile of documents.
No, it's fundamentally about the right to get those records in a usable, legally valid form, like a certified copy.
And the absolute right to receive a clear, legally mandated reason when that record or that format is withheld.
The petition for writ of mandate is the essential tool that takes power away from that bureaucratic wall of silence. When agencies like the Personnel Department and Los Angeles World Airports try to hide, this is what forces them back into compliance.
It guarantees that the system can't just pretend the law doesn't exist. And this leaves us with a final thought to consider. It's one that builds on this fundamental refusal to either certify the forms or state that certifiable versions don't even exist.
Go on.
If government agencies, actively represented by city attorneys, fight so aggressively to avoid providing certified copies of their own official COVID-19 mandate forms, the very policies they enforced on everyone, what does that imply about the actual legal provenance and integrity of those records in the first place?
It's a powerful question. If they refuse to authenticate them,
perhaps there's something they don't want the courts to see.
And that is the question at the very heart of transparency.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into mandatory duties and government accountability. We'll see you next time.
Words in papers, words in books, words on TV, words for books, words of comfort, words of ease, words to make the fighting cease. Eat your words, but don't go hungry. Words have always nearly hung me. Words are stupid, words are fun. Words can put you on the run. Concrete words, abstract words, words to tell you what to do. Words can put you on the run.